So I really want to keep this informal. Please don't feel like we're such a small group that you need to hold your questions to the end. Let's have a discussion, jump in if there's anything you would like to clarify, if you have any questions at any point. So to get us in the mood, I have a little highlight video.
The next 3 days will be filled with music, dance, theater, and all kinds of entertainment.
Over 5,000 cultural events happening.
Arts and culture are in the spotlight. More than 800 communities are ready to showcase their best and their brightest.
I hereby declare Culture Days 2011 open!
We have everything going on here to do with arts and culture that you can imagine, from hip-hop and introductory dance classes to sculpture and art projects.
Being able to dig your hands into some clay and make a sculpture, to being able to paint things, play music.
Here in Canada, when it comes to culture of the arts, they don't leave anybody out.
D'aller en coulisses, d'aller à la rencontre des gens, et ça dans toutes les disciplines, et vraiment ça s'adresse à tout le monde.
From Saskatoon to Flin Flon to Toronto to Halifax,
St. Catharines, Vancouver,
Whitehorse,
PEI,
Waterloo,
St. John,
Ottawa, Winnipeg, Victoria.
it's Newfoundland. Oh, that was nice.
Thousands of cultural events happening across the country throughout the weekend.
Free events, making it more accessible to people in the community right across the country.
There is an objective here of connecting all of us to each other through arts and culture.
We're helping to discover future artists.
I participate in arts and culture by taking pictures.
I make gift cards.
We volunteer.
I belong to Electric Focus Guild.
Very cool jazz. Yeah, and musical theater.
The arts is the social fabric of any community.
Get out there and support your artists.
And that is the main mission of the program, to get more Canadians appreciating the cultural activities around them.
I think it's fantastic because it gets people out to experience cultural events and have a bit of an educational experience at the same time.
It's a chance to do something you may never have a chance to try out or do again.
C'est pas quelque chose qui se nomme, c'est pas quelque chose qui est compliqué, c'est pas quelque chose qui est inaccessible, on n'a pas besoin d'être intellectuel pour faire ça, c'est quelque chose qui est le fun.
Culture Days is for everyone.
So I was just wondering, how many people here participated in Culture Days in the past? Okay, so we're a mix. So I'm just going to go over a little bit what Culture Days is for those of us who are new. Culture Days is a national movement. It happens in every province and territory in Canada. And it's a celebration of culture, and it happens on the last Friday and subsequent weekend of September. So it could be the 30th and 1st, 2nd of October, but it's 28th, 29th, and 30th this year. And Culture Days is really unique because it's open to the full spectrum of creators. So from amateur artists and amateur arts groups to professional artists, individual artists, arts organizations, arts institutions. It really covers the whole gambit. And the goal is to increase public participation and engagement in the arts. So Culture Days is based on a very successful model from Quebec called Journée de la Culture that's 15 years old. So the Canadian Arts Summit kind of looked over at that and thought that's an interesting model, and with that work nationally, and they struck a steering committee, they did a feasibility study, and they found that it would. So this is a model coming out of the arts and culture sector in Quebec, which I always like to emphasize because sometimes people think it's a federal government program, but it's our own initiative coming out of ourselves, and it's a really unique Canadian initiative to increase public participation in the arts. And this is only its third year, so it's really been growing exponentially each year. We had nearly 6,000 activities last year, 1.2 million Canadians out participating, so it has got quite a lot of uptake with the Canadian public. And to participate, there's only 4 criteria, so I'd like to talk about this right up front. If your event has to happen on the Culture Days weekend, which seems obvious but is not always, so it has to happen during those 3 days. You have to register on our site to show that you joined the movement and to get the word out about your activity. Your activity has to be free to the public who are participating in it. And this allows people to try something they might not normally try. It increases that engagement. That isn't to say that you can't, while people are coming to enjoy the free activity, also offer to sell your work, sell tickets to your paid performances, have a silent auction. There are ways that you can produce revenue for yourself, but the actual event that people are participating in needs to be free, and it needs to be participatory or interactive in some way. So really looking for that engagement between creators and the public. So it has that sense of a behind-the-scenes look of how creators create. So those are the 4 criteria. Does anyone have any questions about any of those?
I only have 2. So during the days, register, free activity,
and participatory. Or interactive. So if you have an artist talk, a Q&A, anything that allows for some engagement between creators and the public. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. I also like to emphasize this. Culture Days happens over 3 days. You don't need to have 24-hour, around-the-clock, 3-day programming. You can do, one small activity on one day, and that can still have an impact. And I also like to encourage people to think about Culture Days as part of their annual promotion and marketing. So whether you're an individual artist or you're an arts organization and you're trying to get the word out about your work, Culture Days is a great way to do that. There's lots of promotional tools on the website that we're going to go through to help you with your marketing, but it's a good way to get the word out. We do statistics, and last year we found 2/3 of the people that we surveyed said that they had discovered a local artist or arts organization of which they were not previously aware through Culture Days. So I think that's a very important stat in terms of showing how it can introduce you to the people who are already in your community, who can then go on to be your clients, customers, and come back once they know that you're there. So I think that's a very interesting stat. Also, 70% said that they had a better understanding of how artists and local arts organizations contribute to their community. So that's also a very encouraging statistic about emphasizing the importance of the arts and culture sector across Canada as well. I'm not sure what sectors people are here from. Maybe do we have, who's from visual arts? Okay, do we have anyone from theater? Visual arts and theater. Anyone else? It looked like that was music. Music. Great. I'd just like to provide a couple of examples of what some different organizations and people have done for Culture Days activities, just to get people going to think about things. So for theater, a lot of people do improv workshops or interactive things like theater games. The Grand Theatre in London, a lot of places also do backstage tours, and they did one to show how you go from script to stage, showing the scale models, the costuming, but their tour ended up in the props workshop. And so then people got to make a food prop, which is quite an interesting thing to do. So that was their kind of hands-on component there. Well, visual arts is so varied. I mean, it's very popular to do an artist talk or to do a demonstration so that people can see how you're making something, as well to engage people in an art making activity. And that's where I like to say, even though it is free and participatory and open to the public, you can limit the amount of people who are going to be involved in your activity based on your space and your materials. So if you are working out of a home studio and you really feel like you can only have 10 people in that space, when we go through the page of registration, you can make that clear in your activity description. Say the first 10 people who email me, you're in. That's also clear for if you do want to offer to make something and you have some materials, so you're saying I can really only show 15 people printmaking or whatever, then you can say first 15 people email me, you're in. So then, as long as it's free to them, right? And they'll learn something. So I like to make that point too. You don't feel like you have to, break the bank to teach every single person who's interested in and dole out your materials as well. Music, all kinds of stuff. People are so interested. There's a lot of symphonies do the kind of petting zoo, so where kids can touch instruments and get a chance to actually hold them. And I know that that's a big deal. I came from a school that didn't have a strong music program where we got a triangle once a year, and so just to be able to go and touch and explore instruments is a big deal, as well as, of course, free concerts with having talks with composers and musicians. This is really a good chance to kind of let the public know who we are and kind of how we do what we do. And people always have that niggling question of like, oh, you're an artist? How do you live as an artist? And this kind of gives them the chance to find that out. A lot of communities also with their libraries do that living book exhibit, which is a great way where people can ask those pointed questions because they have different people from the arts and culture sector there available to ask, so what is it like to be a musician? What is it like to be a director? What is it like to be an actor? And they might not ask you that in the coffee shop because it might feel a little bit rude. But if you're there as a book, open to answer those questions, then that's a great way.
So what do you mean by living book? Is that like Q&A or?
It's kind of like, so if you were a book in the library, someone would check you out for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, so they'd sign up to check you out and talk to you, consult you as a resource. It's quite popular. Libraries have been a very good partner for Culture Days all across the country. So it's quite an innovative way, and to also get a scope of the broad sector. So you could have a musician, an actor, a curator. People are always like, what do curators do? They're producers. People aren't clear on that either. It's just a good way to open things up. And even though we don't have anyone here from culture and heritage, I don't think I'll plant some seeds in those areas as well. I don't know if you guys know where Rainy River is, a little bit up north. You're probably more familiar with that than the audiences down south. So their women's museum wanted to talk to the public about preserving artifacts. They didn't necessarily, of course, want them touching their artifacts. So what they did is they invited people to bring in family heirlooms and bring in their own personal artifacts and then showed them how to preserve and care for them. So that's a very nice link in terms of learning something that you can apply in caring for your own treasures and then understanding what museums do for our national treasures. So that's a very lovely link. Is there any other sectors, any other examples that people would like to hear about? They feel like there's a hole, want to hear about another thought? I will give you a sculpture one. There was a metal sculpture of a fish outside of a library that was done in Elmira, and this was a case where they limited. They said, this is only appropriate for 15 people. Children under 7 need an adult, and you have to bring your own hammer because it's a metal sculpture, and you have to bring your own gloves. And that was it. And people signed up. So I think now what I would like to show you is how to register an activity online, just because some parts of it are proving to be not as intuitive as one would like. So just to take you through some common pitfalls and some things that aren't as clear. So I opened mine here, so let's see if I can find it. So all you have to do is go to present an activity, and then it's you signing up to make an account just like anything else with an email and a password. And then once you have that, you'll have an account in My Culture Days, which you can sign into. And I just have this test activity here to show you. And if you have more than one activity, you'll see them all listed here. This tells you whether it's live or draft. And you can publish and make it live, even if you don't know all of the details right now. So if you haven't quite nailed down a venue, but you know you're going to do something and you're talking to people, you can go ahead and publish without having all of the information that you need. And then it's up on the site and you have a longer time to do your promotion. People will know about it. So I want to also let you know you can edit at any time. So even if you've already published it, you can always go in and change it. So don't worry about that at all. If you're doing multiple activities, if you're doing the same activity 3 times, so let's say you're doing an artist talk here with the same artist at the art gallery, but it's happening 3 different times, so that's one activity, and then there's a place to list the 3 different times. If you had a children's art making class outside, and you had an artist talk, and you had a history of the building here, those would be 3 separate activities because the audiences for those 3 things are not necessarily the same. So then you would register those as 3 separate activities.
So what you're saying then is it's one location, and you have 2 or 3 artists participating. Each artist becomes a separate activity because they're presenting their own medium or their own style.
Exactly, because maybe I'm interested in printmaking and not sculpture. So it changes maybe your audience of who's coming out.
So you're assigning a specific time to those individual people, so that's how it separates?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It just helps people to be able to find you. It helps in the search function, and it keeps people from skimming over. If I saw a children's art activity, I might go, oh, well, I don't have any kids, and I might carry on, even though I would have been interested in the historical tour of this building. So it just makes sure people don't miss things. And then so over here in actions, before I go away, preview, edit, this is where you upload your activity image. So it's not when you actually create your account registry, it's here once you've already saved it as a draft or as a live activity that you add your activity image. So people haven't always found that.
What's an activity image?
So this is where you can upload a picture. So on the Culture Days website, activities, these come up and they change. If you don't put a picture, you get our Culture Days logo, which is nice enough, but doesn't maybe stand out as much as this might seem a little bit more interesting. So I would encourage you to upload an image. It just helps people find your event.
Could be your logo.
Could be your own logo, exactly. Doesn't have to be a photograph, could be your logo.